know John Cooper has a lot of those ideas, but I wanted to ask you, Senator, because John Cooper has some really good ideas about the Senate, and one of the things he is in favor of on the campaign trail, he's talked about live streaming the proceedings of the Senate like they do in the House. So first question is, I'd like to know how you feel about that prospect. And number two, one of my biggest issues, the biggest issue that I advocate for as far as transparency goes, is I would like to see all committee votes recorded so that people have more information when they vote, every year or every other year, every election cycle. So what do you think about those two issues?
Well, I think they're definitely ones for debate. I kind of feel like we're already live streaming just because I know we're not, but it seems like there's cameras everywhere all the time anyway. So for me, I'm not really one way or the other on that. I mean, we're so in the public eye, and when you're in the chamber, when you're in the Senate chamber, you feel like you're in a fishbowl. There's a lot of people up in the galleries, and there are a lot of people that come and are involved in the process. And so I really don't have any particular feelings one way or the other on that as far as live streaming the proceedings. I do know, the House does, and it's interesting, and there are pros and cons to that, as there are for anything. Some of the cons is that you have seen kind of some political grandstanding and different kinds of things like that'll happen at the well if they're live streaming and they know they're on TV, and that's unfortunate because you really need to have your debate about the issue at hand and really, maintain that, I guess, courtroom type atmosphere where you're really trying to debate the issue at hand. So some of that may distract, and I've seen a little bit of the grandstanding that's occurred, and that I don't really particularly like, because I think you really need to have a thoughtful debate about things. And everything's open to the public, and I really appreciate all the people that come to the committee meetings and are there for their input. On the votes, I think the chair's responsibility for those committees, that's the chair's responsibility to make sure that there is transparency. And I'm chair of the city, county, local committee, so we deal with all city government, county government, and the laws that govern those types of government, forms of government in our state. And any time that I'm chairing a committee and it's very clearly a vote that is borderline, I call for a roll call vote. Yeah. And I think that's important for the chairs to do that and to have the ability to do that on those kinds of issues. And that's just my decision as a chair to do that. If there's ever a vote that seems like it is on the border, whether we're going to be yes or against it, then I call for a roll call vote. And and I have maintained that and done that. And that is really up to the chair to do that. Right. And in the Senate, we only have 8 on committee, so sometimes we do have an issue, or we may not have, we may have 4 senators there or 5 senators there, and it's not a controversial issue, then the voice vote is sufficient. Carried, nobody really bothers about that. But you're right, and I think there needs to be that standard, but that's up for us individually to hold those standards high for ourselves, I think. Yeah, and we need to make sure the public needs to encourage those people in those roles to hold that high standard. Yeah. So I admire that you when it's a close vote, you call for the roll call vote. Not every chairman of a committee, is so honorable, and I guess that's the biggest issue. And I guess I would ask one more follow-up before we go. It's a big issue to me, and I've heard some people tell me that maybe the reason that every vote in committee is not recorded is because it would it would take up too much time, or logistically. So let me just ask you, logistically, would it take up a bunch of time to do that or not? No, I don't believe it would. Okay. I don't believe it would logistically. I mean, at least on the Senate committee, there's only 8. So, that's right. Not that many. You pull out a piece of paper, somebody records who voted what, and then it's a matter of public record. Right. So.
Well,
that's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And the other thing too is that people need to demand where their legislators stand on those issues, and so the legislator needs to tell them and how they voted, and so all of that is appropriate, and I think it's reasonable and it's responsible. It's like somebody said, and an argument for term limits. Well, we do. We have term limits at the voting box, and that's true. And so, you look at that, but there are things people need to hold politicians or people in government, elected officials, accountable. And there's a job and a responsibility on both of the electorate to maintain that to be responsible to hold them accountable. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
You need to have your electorate involved and informed.
I agree. Senator Missy Irvin from District 18, thanks so much for being on the program. I do appreciate it. And I'll give you the last word,
it was great. Oh, it was great being on your show. I hope I get to meet you in person, and thank you so much.